What really inspires authors to write what they write? How do you become an author? Hi, welcome to Curious Monica by Innovators Box, where we learn how different people thrive at different jobs. I'm your host, Monica Kang, and today I'm excited to learn more about what it's like being an author and working with authors. I've always wanted to write a book because I've been a bookworm all my life. I was prescribed eyeglasses in my first year of elementary school because I read books too closely. I was hungry to learn. The world seemed so big and vast, and I wanted to explore and learn as much as I could. I couldn't wait to read more, and one day maybe even contribute to this vast library of learning with my own words and thoughts. That day turned out faster than I thought. In 2018, I published my first book, Rethink Creativity: How to Innovate, Inspire, and Thrive at Work in the United States. The translated Korean edition came out in winter 2020, and I'm now working on a second English edition that will be out in fall 2021. I share this because there are so many misconceptions I had about being an author. It's such a humbling and reflective journey. None of the steps happen overnight, and the effort you put into the development of the book, from the writing to the design to the positioning, all matters. And so as I saw more friends publish and share their stories, I got curious. What does it mean to be an author, and why do we become authors? Why do we choose to share our stories and thoughts?
When I started the publishing company, I did not do any research into business models related to what it entails to start a publishing company. And I'm actually grateful that I didn't, because I think if I had looked into it, I might have been a little more hesitant to have started what I started. And so that, I think, is kind of like a piece of advice. It's, you either trust your gut and just do it anyway, or you do the research and realize, okay, wow, this is a much heavier lift than I was expecting it to be. Maybe this isn't the right path for me.
And I also want to be able to evolve. I think that a lot of times in this world as an author and a speaker, you see, real talk, the author writes the same book 6 times, right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because I can't do that. I'm not interested in that. I'm too curious to do that. I can't do that.
Hopefully having more women write their stories and maybe writing a few good ones myself. I'm fairly critical about what I can write and what I think I will write. So I think, I could write a couple of things, but maybe also if I can help a lot of women write the stories they need to write, that would be great.
So I think I was 10 or 11. I don't know if I remember this or if I've just heard it so much from my mom. But she said I was 10 or 11 when I said, Mom, I want to write books. I want to be a writer. But I was super shy, super timid. So I said, I want to be behind the scenes and just let my work be out there.
So I wrote the book, right? And I wanted to make a huge impact. And so empowering differences is kind of, writing a book is kind of like very legacy driven thing that it lives on for forever, right?
The book is a story about the journey, about her dream when she was little, about no one understanding. And it's a little Asian girl because I feel like there aren't enough of us in children's books, and there should be. And not just in let's talk about, Chinese New Year, but also let's just be a person in a book, having this experience.
In today's episode, I'm excited to speak with different friends in the book world. Friends who write books, a friend who publishes books, a friend who wrote a children's book, and a friend who helps others tell their stories that become books. As you will quickly see, while what they write, why they write, or why they are part of this industry is different, they all share a key understanding. Writing a book is a humbling journey. This is probably why having a clear why is often a core driver to much of their work in this field. Why do you want to write? Sometimes the drive comes from somewhere we didn't expect. Ivy Kwong, a therapist, shares how her personal healing inspired her to write her children's book, The Little Girl, the Ocean, and the Moon.
I didn't choose to write this book. This was not a choice. This was not something that came from my brain. So one of the possibilities in work as a therapist is called reparenting work or inner child healing work. And it's where you energetically go back in time and connect with that younger you, like precious little 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old Monica, right? And so remembering how precious she was at that time. And if there were things that she did not get, if she didn't get attention, care, love, protection in any way, then giving that to her now and parenting your younger self. And so sometimes when we don't go back to healing our younger selves, that younger self leads and and drives your life and picks your partners and chooses, what you do and don't do. And it's like, until you heal that wounded younger self that you don't even know might be actually managing your life right now, you can't heal that. So in my process of inner child work and healing, I have a relationship with little Ivy. Like, we'll go on walks together and I'll be like, let me get you, what do you want? She's like, I want ice cream. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get you an ice cream. I literally talk to her as if she is a being. And so again, if you're listening to this, like, woo, I don't know if that's for me. It's just one possibility, but all the parts of you that have ever been are still within you. There's still 5, 10, 15, 20. There's still little Monica who's friend, betrayed her when she was a teenager, that hurting part of you. And if you can go back in time and acknowledge that age you, her experience is valid, her feelings are valid, all of that, and she deserves protection. You're going to take care of her now. You didn't know better then maybe, but you can support her now.
Ivy shed light into one item I've often wondered about. How often do we write for others, and how often do we write for ourselves? We're most touched when writers write for others with their authentic voice. And because so much writing is often for the purpose of marketing and not empathizing, much of those insights feel like noise. This is why her story and her work resonates. She even tries to bring attention to topics like representation.
It's a little Asian girl because I feel like there aren't enough of us in children's books, and there should be, and not just in let's talk about, Chinese New Year, but also let's just be a person in a book, having this experience.
So what's something that you've wanted to write from your heart? That might be the story you want to share. Okay, but real talk. Now that you want to write, where do you start? It seems like such an exclusive world. And while there are many independent authors, self-published books coming out, the publishing world still feels very difficult to enter. If you ever felt that way, you aren't the only one. Meet my friend Smiley Pozwolski, the author of 3 wonderful books, The Quarter-Life Breakthrough, The Breakthrough Speaker, and The Friendship in the Age of Loneliness, who shares how that feeling initially made it wonder even more. How do you become an author when you have no connections to the publishing world?
There weren't a lot of resources, at least it didn't feel that way when I was getting started, of how do you do this, or in a way that were accessible. It was kind of felt like, oh, there was this closed door club of authors that knew each other in New York. And that's usually, to bring in, a very privileged folks that went to good schools or very connected. And it's usually, dominated by older white men, to be perfectly frank. And it didn't feel like, as someone emerging into the space that there was any path. How do you do that? How do you write a book? How do you self-publish? How do you get an agent, get a book deal? How do you get paid $5,000 or $10,000 to speak? I didn't feel like I could figure that out. Yeah, you can search online, but there weren't that many easy ways to do that. So as I kind of realized, people were identifying with my content, but they were also identifying with the journey and the fact that I had said, you know what, I'm going to do this and figure it out and share the journey. And that's what people resonate with too. It's kind of the fact that you built it from scratch, the fact that you tried, the fact that you got rejected, you self-published and then get a book deal. You start speaking. My first talk was in a bookstore that I rented out in San Francisco in the Mission. I paid money to do my talk, $150 to rent the space and get, wine and cheese and snacks. That was my first talk, in the back of a bookstore, not like the main bookstore, the back area little event space. And I started it from there, and now I'm speaking all around the world. But people want to hear, how do you make that jump, and how do you build it up over time?
Ha! Indeed. This is why I asked him that very question as well. As Smiley is not only a phenomenal speaker and author, but also a community builder. He wanted to make this world more accessible for others who desired to enter. This is why he facilitates community programs, Facebook groups, and dialogues on these topics. As someone who has both self-published and worked with a publisher, he shares how understanding the how can also humble you in the journey of writing. In other words, having a great idea and writing a book is not the end of the story. How will you market it? How will people know the book is out? And how will you help make it accessible to all matters? Smiley shares why those efforts matter. Because you never know how what you do can make a difference to others.
I guess one of the things would be that you don't realize the impact that you're having. You don't realize the power of putting your story out there, because if one person reads an essay that you wrote or a chapter of your book or sees your TEDx talk and it changes their life, or they decide, you know what, I hate this job, I'm going to leave, or I need to do something different, or this relationship isn't working for me, or whatever, they make a change in their life. Once you, as people that like us that are creatives that start to put things out there, you will get some of those notes. Not thousands every day, but you will get those Facebook messages and Instagram messages and emails where people are like, hey, this really impacted me. This really changed me. Here's what happened. Here's what I'm going to do. That's the why, right? Not for an ego perspective, but of you change someone. If you didn't do this, something wouldn't have happened, and I get some of those of, I was reading Quarter Life Breakthrough, and I felt like I was going through the same thing. And this made me really rethink how I'm living my life, and made me, decide that I want to do X, Y, or Z. And that keeps you going. And that's what I think that we think about all the things stacked against us. It's going to take 3 years. I don't have that software. I don't know how to do that. How do I self-publish? I'm never going to get an agent. I have 0 followers on Twitter, all of the blah, 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 blah. But we don't think about, wait a second, if I put my story out there, if I share my truth, if I connect with people, if I talk about real stuff that's happening in the world that needs to change, and real issues and problems, and talk about what I believe what should happen in the workplace, or structural issues in this country or in the world, whatever it is, if you start talking about that, the power it has. So I don't think I fully realized that until I started going. And even now I'm getting, I can get rejection, and I have failures, and things are tough, and there's challenges every day in this life. And that stuff kind of keeps you going.
Are you catching the theme here? When authors write with others in mind, the impact is more transformative. I bet Smiley's experience would not have been the same if his goal was to simply impress people. It wasn't. And it never has been, which is why when you read his work, you will hear a voice that will encourage you. I appreciated Smiley's breakdown of this insight, as I knew how I hesitated also for a long time to write my book, and worried a lot after its release. Am I doing well enough? Are people not liking what I write? And then you get this one message where someone says, wow, thank you for writing your book. It helped me find new courage to rethink my life and career. It's in those moments when you realize, yes, that's all it is. To help one person at a time. It's how I feel about how much care and thought we put into these podcast episodes. One person shared with me a great quote that I think you'll like too. Do the hard right things, and do less of the easy wrong things. There are so many goals you could have for your book as an author. But what are the hard right goals you want to set? Why do you really want to write this book and be the author? Speaking of which, I was also curious how Smiley chose his topic. Unlike other authors who have similar themes, he wrote on quite a few different looking themes: millennial workplace transitions, how to be a better speaker, and how to make better friends in the age of loneliness. His answer made me smile.
So I think like if I look back and kind of look at the projects I've worked on over the past few years, that the key theme that kind of unites them is, what is it that I'm struggling with? And then realizing that other people are struggling with it too. Right. So it started with kind of like quarter life. What am I doing? Meaningful work. What does that mean? Being in your 20s or 30s and feeling lost, and then kind of opening up and realizing, oh my God, this is a total thing. Everyone's going through this. And not only that, it's actually a workplace crisis, because the millennials are the largest generation in the workplace. They're searching for meaning and purpose, but nobody knows what that actually means. And companies don't know how to keep them happy and attract them or retain them and engage them. This could be a thing. This could actually be, there's a service to be provided here. There's a need to be solved. But I didn't want to have known that without kind of just exploring what I was going through, right? So I think that that's where it starts. And then the Breakthrough Speaker, my next project, was kind of, okay, I'm starting to speak about these topics. I don't know how to do it. How do you make a living doing this? How do you get from really like just starting to a little bit better and kind of maybe a professional, and then maybe hopefully really up there, which, I'm not at yet, and then kind of exploring that. So for me, it's the inquiry piece. It's the curiosity piece. And I also want to be able to evolve. I think that a lot of times in this world, as an author and a speaker, you see, real talk, the author writes the same book 6 times, right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because I can't do that. I'm not interested in that. I'm too curious to do that. I can't do that. There will be similar themes and my stories that weave throughout, and my style and my voice and my community, but I want to be able to explore whatever it is I'm interested in, and what I'm interested in changes over time. I still do a lot of work with millennials now, and I care about that topic, but I'm now speaking much more about connection and belonging and friendship in the workplace, because that's what I'm writing about. And that's what I think is really important right now.
Write about what you care about and are curious about. Perhaps the topics may change, but it's your unique approach and thinking as an author that others are drawn to. So how are you sharing that? Still, you want to make note about your market and who you are speaking to. Ashley Brundage, Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at PNC and the founder and author of Empowering Differences, shares what she thought about as she was writing her book. There were 2 approaches she could take. She decided on one path because of the greater impact she would make by increasing reader accessibility.
So for me, this was really kind of, so of course I survived gender transition, and while that's, potentially a great book in its own right, I feel like that book has been written by numerous people. And as a businesswoman, number one, I wanted to make sure that I was writing a book that was going to really be marketable for all people. And my gender transition, while it's compelling and potentially inspirational, it doesn't necessarily correlate to others on a mass market appeal. But my career journey, though, is a mass market appeal information, because I shared a little bit about my first career and what I learned. But really, when I thought through those discriminatory interviews that I was mentioning earlier in the podcast, that led to me finding employment. And I found employment as a part-time bank teller. And being a part-time bank teller was such a punch in the gut. Honestly, it was well below my capability skills. It really kind of recentered me, and had to, really almost kind of like that innovation, right? You were talking about, had to reinvent myself in essence. And so I was able to grow my career from a part-time bank teller to being the VP of diversity and inclusion for a major financial services organization in less than 5 years. And so doing that, going from part-time teller to VP of diversity and inclusion in less than 5 years was the foundation of what I wanted to get across on how I did that. So I built it into a 4-step process of empowerment.
Ashley's humility makes her story and work even more inspirational. The first time I met her was a few years ago when she was on stage as the keynote speaker at NGLCC, the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. She realized speaking about the importance of allyship and empowerment would be even more powerful if she made the tools relatable beyond the community of her comfort. That takes extra courage, humility, and empathy. And in this process, she can empower others to learn more about the LGBT community. She made it easy for others to learn how to be a better ally too. So what are the 4 steps? You may want to write it down. Part 1, knowing yourself. Part 2, knowing others. Part 3, developing your strategy. And Part 4, 10 empowering actions that are, as Ashley describes, integrally important in growing your career. Writing is truly an active legacy. So how can you take the opportunity to empower as many people as you can? Speaking of which, there's another role that plays a key role in how books come to life. Publishers. And yes, like authors, there are many forms of publishing companies that play a role in this space. But I'm glad that the big old names are not the only ones around. Meet my friend Jen Grace, the founder and CEO of Publish Your Purpose Press, who is on the mission to publish nonfiction stories of voices to make a difference. She is also the publisher of my book, Rethink Creativity. I asked her how she became an author and started a publishing company. Is this what you thought you wanted to do in your career? The answer was no.
Well, I love these questions. And the short answer to the latter question is no. I have an undergrad in communications and a master's in integrated marketing communications. And with those degrees in college, I just was kind of like, what do I enjoy doing? I enjoy communicating, writing, kind of a lot of things in that space. And so sadly, I got a communications degree because it seemed broad enough to apply into anything. So I didn't really have a vision, if you will, of owning a publishing company, no less. So the way I got here, I will condense a very long story and just share that it was very zigzag. I think a lot of times there's this vision that's taught of you do one thing and then you do the other thing and you do the other thing. But the reality is that it is one crazy loop of zigzags and all around. And so I had a consulting company. I wrote a couple books. I had people ask me, how did you write said books? I started teaching people how to write the books, and people asked me if I could publish the books. So that is the shortest way to answer that question. That evolved over from probably 2006 to 2015. So it was a long, very organic process, but I am here and I absolutely love what I'm doing and I wouldn't change anything.
And I loved working with Jen as well. We were introduced as I finished my book draft in fall 2017, and I was looking for a publisher who understood my vision and could also challenge me to grow even more. Jen understood both my mission and the lack of diversity I felt, but also what it was like to share a story as a consultant and speaker who has been there before. This is why I appreciated how she not only helped me organize my operational publication process of the book, but also how she does a lot of training and programs for others to learn how to rethink the publication process. So I asked her, what would she recommend for how we organize workflow as an author?
So building on that, tell me advice on how authors can be more organized, because I can envision they'll be like, ooh, that sounds also helpful for me if I have all these different ideas on I'm figuring out what to write and figuring out who to write for. Where do we start?
That to me, that's a harder question, which you would think that would be the easier one to answer since I work with authors and I am an author. I would say the way that I have my author file structure, we'll just use myself an example, and it's subsequently how we have our authors' files also organized, is just based on what the thing is. So if it's files related to your cover, you have a cover file. If it's files related to some marketing thing doing, you have a marketing folder, and just have folders and items beneath. You can also use a program, again, like Trello. I'm sure there's a way to do it in Slack. For me, having the boards in Trello are so valuable because I can put all of my random thoughts in one location. So I might have a Trello board that just is for book marketing because, when you're going through the publishing process, hopefully you have somebody who's supporting you through that process because it's very difficult doing it on your own, number one. But if you don't have that, you really, really, really need to be organized because there are so many moving pieces and parts that it's really kind of hard to kind of keep track of what's going on.
So what happens once you have things organized?
But once the book is actually done, all of the hard work really starts to happen. And that's the marketing and the promotion of the book. So I think what happens is that someone might be hearing us have a conversation and maybe they already have a book. And one of us says something like really good. And they're like, oh, I want to remember that. Where do you put that information? Do you jot it in a notes on your phone? Do you put it in Trello? Are you sending yourself an email? Or are you writing it down on a Post-it? However you're doing it, just be consistent and do it all in the same place. So, if you're using Post-its, get different color Post-its and just jot yourself a note down thematically. So maybe the blue Post-its are things related to your book. Maybe the yellow Post-its are things that you need to remember to tell somebody on your team about, and just kind of move through the process that way. I like Trello because it really provides just easy access to throw all of the ideas in.
So much to organize indeed. Every time I thought something was set, there was something new I had to keep track of. I then have to reevaluate how things had been done to wonder what else I could do. The key is, as you continue to organize, you leave room for adapting and growth. As what works one time may not work as you continue to write more, collect more data, and gather more insights. So Jen, any thoughts on where the publishing trend is going? If I want to write a book, should I try to get publishing deal or do self-publishing?
So the publishing industry broadly has always been viewed as there's traditional publishing and then there's self-publishing. And it's viewed as the spectrum with huge extremes. And no one ever thinks about what happens in the middle. And the middle is where things have been emerging for the last decade. And that's where PYP, my company, kind of fit right in that middle emerging space. And the beautiful part is that you're not beholden to the ways in which traditional publishing works. And you're not doing self-publishing in a way where you have to kind of relearn and rethink things every single time. And with traditional publishing, there's a lot of, it's honestly thinking about traditional publishing as the Titanic, or maybe not, we'll say a cruise liner, because I'm not implying that the Titanic is going down. Maybe we'll just say a big cruise liner that's slow, right? They move slow versus the hybrid space, which is that middle ground, is very much like a speedboat where we're able to pivot and adapt and modify on the fly, gather new data, dispense it among the team, decide what we're going to do. And we can make that decision in a matter of minutes or days. Whereas a corporation, which is what the traditional publishers are, they're corporations and they act like corporations and they treat things like corporations. And it's not to say that corporations are bad or wrong. There's a place for everybody, but they just are not as nimble. And we can see based on how the consolidation among the industry continues to consolidate, like it was the big, more than 5, now it's 4, and now there's 2 talking about merging into another that would bring us down to 3. And so what that does is it prevents access to opportunities for first-time authors, because now there's less of the traditional publishing opportunities. And so then all of these folks in the middle that look at traditional publishing and say that I don't want that path anyway. I don't want my voice to be watered down. I don't want my story or my narrative to change because they think something is going to sell better. And that's the reality of how that side of the industry operates. And so when it comes to, at least now thinking about hybrid, which is what I do, and there's many, many companies like mine out there, I think we're special because I love my team. I think we're great. And I love the authors that we work with, including you, Monica. I have such a rich love for the process and the people. And There are a lot of other companies that kind of do what we do. They take different approaches than we might take. And that's the beauty of a good economy, though, is that you as an author have choices and decisions that you can make that are going to be in your best interest.
Authors can choose what is best for your interest. And yes, I agree with Jen. The people in this space make a difference. So many authors I've befriended have such humility and down-to-earth perspectives. And I wonder if part of it is drawn out more because of how much patience, humility, and hard work writing a book takes. It's not overnight. For me, writing took a year. It took at least 3 iterations, and just when I thought it was done, we still needed to change up everything. Once it was published, we realized we could still improve, so now we have a second edition out. The impatient part of me just wanted to get it done, and because I couldn't, it really challenged me to reflect on what I wanted to truly get out of this process. It was having a voice and inspiring others. This is why I love how Dr. Stephanie Han is on the mission to not only write more stories as an author, but also to educate others on how to write better stories, especially as a woman.
Most women start out feeling that they don't have a right to write their story, okay? And I mean this very profoundly because women have not been writing on the page for very long, just a few hundred years. And if you look at how long people have been actually engaging in writing, they always point to Sappho, 5th century poet in Greece, or 10th century Lady Murasaki, but they point to these examples because there are like 3 of them. Okay, so when we're talking about large numbers of women writing, it hasn't really been very long. And even in terms of that, we're talking decades. So writing is a radical act. So women coming into a space and writing, people need a little reassurance that it's okay to do it. And another thing is a lot of our deeply canonical texts that we abide by spiritually or legally, they do not include women. And it is assumed that we start in a situation in a state of error, like our bodies, where we are, who we are. Women don't even name all of their body parts. Our lives are legislated so that we often feel shame and humiliation and awkwardness about our very physical body. So this puts writing also in a different space. Is it okay to write about my body? Is it okay to tell this story? Or I'm gonna be viewed as somebody who shouldn't have told the story. Well, who's the people that told you not to tell the story? If this is your story, you have a right to tell the story. So it's about the right to exist as a woman and what this really means. And once you declare this, you have to understand that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be uncomfortable with it, because declaring that you have a right to feel and that your story is valid is a deeply radical act.
Dr. Stephanie Han is the author of award-winning fiction collection, Swimming in Hong Kong, and also a passionate advocate for empowering women to write more stories. She offers regular writing workshops to teach women how to tell their story and why it matters. And as she shared, while some may feel uncomfortable telling your story for the first time, writing your story, whether online or as a book, is your right. It's something we can all do. Makes me think of the quote, "Everyone has a book within them." It's true. Everyone has a unique perspective and insights they could share that others could learn from. The important step is to actively listen. Listen to how others tell their story and what inspires you. Listen to your audience and what they may be hungry for. But most importantly, listen to your heart and your voice and get curious about why you want to write this story and share it with others. I asked Dr. Han, where can one start to get comfortable declaring one's own voice?
Write in a journal, and don't be mean to yourself when you write. You write 2 minutes, you're good. You write 5 minutes, you're amazing. If you can just write a little and reflect when you can without punishing yourself, this is a very good practice. Too often, there would be the dates in the journal, right? And people write for like 4 days, then they miss a day. Then they're like, oh my God, there's that gap. I didn't hit that day. And then they do another 5 days and then they miss it. And then they give up because they feel like they didn't hit that schedule. So don't discipline yourself in that way. Just keep honoring that you're doing it and carve out just a few minutes. Another thing is reading, but read in the area you like. You know, the more you read, the better. Do not force yourself to read things that are boring. We do this. We're like, we need to read it because everybody else is reading it. Who says we need to read it? If we don't like it, put it away. Life is too short. There's millions of books. You don't like something after 30 minutes, an hour, forget it. And then, later, you already bought the book, you feel bad, you paid $35. You can look at it again if you decide in another year that you like it. But don't go to reading and writing as a source of punishment. Society punishes us already. We're not tall enough. We're not beautiful enough. We're not smart enough. We didn't go to the right college. Our mom is mad. So don't go to reading and writing for extra punishment. You go to it for joy and for release and for expression.
Repeat that again, please. To be a better writer, you have to make writing and reading an activity you enjoy. Read and write what brings you joy. Write what you want to express. Read what makes you feel relieved. That requires us to be curious, open and aware of what we like and what we don't like, which may also mean that over time, you may change what you like. Remember Smiley earlier? When I asked him what future books he may write, this is what he shared.
Maybe in a few years, it'll be something else. I couldn't tell you what it is right now because I don't know. So I think that that's something that I want to build my work around, is being able to have the flexibility to try new things, explore new things, go where the wind blows, or where the energy, where the music is playing. Because I think we've been taught as entrepreneurs sometimes, you pick the thing, that's your thing. And there's some truth to why that there is some elements of that, right? You do have to do the thing for longer than a few days or a few weeks or probably a few years if you're going to make any traction on it. And as a creative, you have to be open to exploring new things, and you have to go where you're excited about, and you have to be able to pivot, and you are allowed to pivot and try new things, and you're allowed to explore new topics, and it's still you, and it's all good. You can change the copy on your website. Let's say that, right? You can change the copy on your website. It's your website.
Take ownership in what you write, read, and continue to write again. And Jen will kindly also remind you that's the same thing when it comes to publishing. Whether you're looking to choose the right partner or want to build a publishing company too, think about what you really want and own it.
If you are listening to this and you have any intentions of writing more than one book, it might behoove you to start figuring out how you can at least do your own books, and then maybe that will lead into something else. But at the same time, if you are busy, you're running a company already, you have 10,000 other activities that are going on, outsourcing it is probably going to be the better bet, because our project plans, the last time I looked, and I haven't looked in a while, the last time I looked was 206 steps. 206 independent steps to get a book published. And I'm confident it's actually more steps now. So if you want to learn all 206 steps, some of which are super easy and some of which have like 18 bullet points under a step, by all means. But it's one of those things to just kind of evaluate what's going to make most sense for you. And there's tons of information out there. There's a lot of bad information. There's also a lot of good information. And I certainly I've got plenty. So if you're watching this and you need something, feel free to reach out, because I've got lots of resources. I like to educate people on your options, the process, what's involved, to like really set expectations right, so that way you can be successful. Because there's way too many companies out there that they don't really care about your success. They just want your money, and they're going to do whatever they want. And it's like, there needs to be mutual success, because without you having success, then why am I doing what I'm doing if the people I'm serving aren't going to be successful,
You decide what you want. As I say this, I'm looking back at one of my favorite quotes I have on my wall. Be the lead in your own story, by TV anchor Robin Robertson. Don't see your story represented here? Go write one. Feel like the publishing world is holding you back? Self-publish it. Not sure where to go? Search for who might be able to help and be an ally for them. The key is that you take ownership of the narrative you want to write and live, both as an author and as an individual. So what are you waiting for? Write that book, share your book, and read more books. Your stories matter. Speaking of stories, next time we'll catch up with some friends in a field where storytelling matters all the time. Entertainment. In the heat of finding more representation for diverse voices and stories, I had a humbling conversation with a few friends who work in creative content in this field. Curious to learn more? Join me at our next Curious Monica episode. This is your host, Monica Kang at Innovators Box, and I'll see you soon. We hope you also celebrated Pride Month this June. Take a moment to learn more about how you can be an ally and advocate for all stories, including the voices of the LGBTQ community. You can start by learning more about how Ashley and Jen played key roles as active leaders in the community through their work of inclusion and impact. I'll see you again soon.
Oh, hi! I'm Saren Oh, a creative producer at Innovators Box, and I hope you're enjoying Curious Monica. I adore learning about all the possible fields that people go into. Like I once met a girl in France who was moving to Copenhagen to fulfill her lifelong dream of becoming a professional chair maker. So amazing. This show is brought together by our awesome team, producer Saren Oh, audio engineers Sam Lammert and Ravi Ladd, Kelly Gravo on marketing, website designer Akriti Pandy, graphic designer Monica Escobar, and Luke Helder on music. And of course, this show is hosted and directed by the curious woman herself, Monica Kang, founder and CEO of Innovators Box. To continue the curiosity and creativity of the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. We'd love to hear what you're curious about and what mysteries Monica can uncover in our next episodes. See you next week!